Shirring is a method of gathering fabric in a way that gives it stretch. Making a shirred panel is surprisingly easy. You'll need a lighter to medium weight fabric. Shirring will not work with heavier weight fabric like denim. You'll also need elastic thread, which can be found at Joann stores with specialty thread. With elastic thread, you will need to hand wind the bobbin, being careful not to stretch the thread as you go. This elastic thread will be loaded into your bobbin and placed into your machine. The elastic has the tendency to be pulled back into the bobbin when you get started, so once your bobbin is loaded into your machine, pull out a tail of elastic that is a few inches long. If you're sewing with a pattern that calls for shirring, the amount of fabric you need will already be factored into your pattern pieces. If you're doing a pattern hack to incorporate a shirred panel to a garment, like for the back of a dress or a shirt, you will need to estimate the starting width of your fabric. This isn't a precise science, but usually multiplying your desired width by 1.3 for thinner elastic thread or 1.8 for heavier elastic thread will give you a good measurement for your starting fabric width. You can always make your fabric wider than what you think you need and trim it down after. If you do trim a shirred panel, be sure to add stay stitching just along the inside of your cutting line or elastic will come loose. Begin with your fabric already hemmed. It can be tricky to do this later after the fabric is shirred. To get started, draw guidelines onto the right side of your fabric for the rows of shirring you will be making. If your pattern doesn't specify the distance for the rows, a 1/2 inch is a good general distance for shirring lines. Before stitching, set your stitch length to 4, and you may need to increase the tension in your machine as well. It's always a good idea to practice with a scrap piece of fabric first. When you do the stitching, you'll backstitch at the beginning for only a couple of stitches, and then you'll go in a maze-like fashion from row to row. If you decide to do separate rows of stitching, you will end up with a lot of extra elastic tails. Shirring will require multiple rows to achieve a good gathered effect. You can see here that with only a couple of rows of stitching, it's barely elasticated. But with 4 rows or more, you can get a nice gathered stretch effect here. As your fabric becomes more gathered, you'll have to stretch it out a bit to feed it under your sewing machine foot. At the end, backstitch a stitch or 2, then trim your thread. Secure the ends of each row with a line of stay stitching. The water-soluble marker will come out in the wash, and a bit of steam or ironing will help the shirred lines to lay flat.